Hi, this is Tom Pisello, the ROI guy, and welcome to the Value Coffee Talk podcast. This podcast is a service of the Business Value Collective. We're a community of value-focused go-to-market leaders, practitioners, and it's also sponsored by my value consultancy, Genius Drive. We're here to share and grow together. And to help us do that, I've got a really special guest. And if you've been on LinkedIn, you've probably seen a lot of industry thought leaders, other authors holding up this book and saying how good it is. And it's the book called Is Good Enough Good Enough? And we're so lucky to have the author, David Brock, here with us. Hi, David.
Hey, Tom, it's so great to be on this. I think this is maybe the second or third time that I've been on it. It's such an honor.
Oh, thanks so much. So if you don't know David, he's the CEO of a consultancy called Partners in Excellence. They're sales performance oriented. And he's author of a couple of other bestsellers. I know this one is on the way to being one. The Sales Manager Survival Guide. So especially for like new sales managers, getting sales managers up to speed, an absolutely essential book there. And this new book, which is what we're here to talk about today. So David, first of all, what compelled you to write a new book and one about this particular challenge?
Well, there are a couple of things that kind of drove me to it. And one is, I think the main one is over the last, I'll call it 4 or 5 years, but particularly the last maybe 3 years, I've seen this steady decline in people's performance. Before I wrote the book, I kept talking about why are we pursuing mediocrity so strongly? Why do we find it's so important? And I sit down and talk with people and say things like, why do you find win rates of 15 and 20% acceptable things? You're spending the time on the other 80, 85%. What do you do to figure out how do you win more of those things? Or you look at organizations that are doing very well, they're hitting their numbers, but when you do analysis, if I'm hitting my numbers and I'm getting 15 to 20% win rates and 35% of my people are hitting their goals, but I'm still hitting my numbers, you start scratching your head and say they're underperforming their potential.
Yeah.
And so what I really wanted to do was examine what causes individuals and what causes organizations to perform so differently. So like an example might be is I have 2 salespeople working for the same company. They have similar territories. They have the same manager, so they're probably getting equivalent coaching. But one consistently outperforms the other. So you say, well, they have the same product, the same tools, the same processes, the same technology, the same AI, all those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. What causes that change? And you realize it's not those tools, or I call them mechanisms. It's something about the way they think and the way they work. And that got me around to what are the key mindsets and behaviors that are different for high performers than from other people. And that's kind of what drove me to the book.
Yeah, thanks for that, David. And, I think the frustrating thing for a leader, a CRO or a sales leader, VP, or even a manager level is like our sellers have more tools than ever. They probably have more content than ever. We've empowered them with so much. They've got a new methodology. They've got all of these things. And I think what you're saying is like, some of those things may even be getting in the way. Like we're not focusing on the right elements. And now with AI, it's kind of become even greater of a challenge because the expectations are elevating of like what every salesperson can do. And yet then again, here's another whole set of new tools that according to maybe what you're saying, aren't going to move the needle at all. And in fact, may drive us the opposite way.
Well, and in fact, I think that's what we do. And I mean, we see salespeople all the time. They're just overloaded and overwhelmed, both with kind of the stuff that they have to do in the job. Is now with AI is rather than writing 100 emails a day, I have to write 10,000 emails a day. They're still crappy emails, but they're 10,000 emails.
Yeah.
And do that. And then I have to do all these other things. And then I have, all this stuff of the change that's going on and trying to keep up with the change. So in fairness to a lot of these people, they're just overwhelmed and overloaded, and being able to manage the change is a real challenge for them. And it's not just for the sellers, it's for the leaders as well. I go in and I feel some level of compassion, as much as a person like me can feel compassion, but I feel some compassion for them because they have very, very tough jobs. And so you kind of want to say, how do I start clearing the deck, and where should I focus on, and what should I do to really start, and here I may get kind of a little esoteric, but rather than achieving my goals, achieving my potential, because in most cases, our potential is far higher than our goals.
Yeah.
Um,
And I love that perspective, because the goals kind of drive us to do more and more and more with less and less and less. And yet potential kind of is a way to maybe transcend that in a way. So when we look at that, this may have us hiring differently. And also, I think, kind of activating differently, and activating in a broader sense of coaching and training and everything else. So there were a set of characteristics that you had come up with, these key traits. And that's what the book is really a lot about, is really highlighting, like, what were those differentiators between mediocrity and full potential and excellence?
Yeah. And so those are what I call the mindsets and behaviors. And I kind of look at mindsets and behaviors as interleaved. The mindset is kind of, the mindset part. The behavior is the execution of those mindsets.
So
and
it's like
those kinds of
intent,
things.
like an intent.
There's
And then
the intent, and then what do I do to demonstrate that intent? And the behaviors are the demonstration of that intent. And what I did is I kind of came up with about 7, and whether it's the right number or whatever, that's immaterial. But I think the principle is important, and identified kind of 7 key things. One is a commitment to continuous learning, and really underneath that, an intense curiosity. The second is customer centricity. The third is accountability, no excuses. The fourth is an ability to deal with change and ambiguity. The fifth is one of disciplined execution. Kind of setting your goals and doing it rather than continuing to push them off and defer them, and so on. The sixth is really one around caring, and caring is a through line that goes throughout, and it's not a wishy-washy kind of thing. We have to care for ourselves and our personal success. We have to care for our customers. We have to care for our colleagues and our organizations and their success. And if we don't care, then we can never leverage those other behaviors in a way that enables us to achieve our full potential. And then kind of overlaid on that is what I look at is why do we fail? I missed the 7th one, is purpose. What's our purpose? What are we as individuals driven by and trying to achieve? And it's more than hitting a number. It's more than getting a paycheck. But what is our purpose, and what is our organization's purpose, and are we aligned behind that? So then you look at, why do we fail? What causes failure? How do we learn from failure? We look at then we start looking at how AI impacts all this, because AI kind of changes the world. And also that's kind of the sequence that we go through in the book.
Yeah, the accountability, I think, is where you maybe put that introspection, right, of the looking at failure, and maybe there. So I love these 7. I don't know if I've got the order right, but curiosity, continuous learning, accountability and introspection, customer centric and value focused, outcome focused, embracing change, discipline, caring. And then the big one, I think, that's a big driver that a lot of people miss is, if you're doing all of this just to get that bigger commission check, it kind of doesn't work. And you
Yeah.
have to have a bigger purpose ultimately.
Yeah.
We are both spiritual, as we know. I know from other interviews I've done for you on other podcasts that are not business oriented. So in an AI world where we're valuing a lot of times output and more productivity and other things, this is going back to a lot of softer stuff that, where are our younger salespeople picking this up? Where is this going to ultimately come from into the organization? And how do you recommend that this list of 7 kind of get activated within? Because a lot of the systems, a lot of the investments, the methodologies, the tools don't address all of these softer kind of potential optimization, full potential tools.
And that's the worry that I see. And I started seeing this before AI, but then it's just accelerated and amplified with AI.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know that people are picking this up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that people are being conscious about there's something missing here. There's something which we all talk about, whether it's the human in the middle, the human side, the creative, the contextual, the ability to sit across 2 screens and look each other in the eyes
Mm-hmm.
and kind of read what's happening, and not, all the data that AI can provide us and support us with, but how can we take that and contextualize that with deep meaning and deep impact for the person I'm talking to and the person I'm engaging. And I think we've, to some degree, the pendulum has swung so far to the mechanization piece. And this preceded AI is we've been designing the human in the middle out.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we've been de-emphasizing those behaviors and mindsets that become the ultimate differentiators. So we've talked so much about technology. We have the playbooks. We have the scripts that you cannot deviate from.
Mm-hmm.
We measure activities and not outcomes and results and those kinds of things. So we've been consciously or unconsciously designing the human and the humanity out of the process. But when you look at, say, the other side, say customers, and you start saying, what is it that they need most?
Mm-hmm.
And all they don't need, to have us spout about their products, our features, functions, and show our glory slide about all the cool customers we have. Is they want people to understand them and their problem.
Mm-hmm.
They want to understand, how they feel, their concerns. We talk about, both like Ted McKenna and Matt Dixon talk so much about the fear of messing up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's intensely human. And we have kind of trained the ability to connect with people at that level out of salespeople and out of leadership.
Yep.
And that's why we see these plummeting results. And so you start saying, what are those things? How do I reinstitute those? And that's, again, the mindsets and behaviors. And again, I look at it individually and organizationally. Like the previous example, 2 salespeople with the same kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms, but they perform very, very differently. Or I look at it as 2 organizations, very competitive products, all the tools and all the things and all that. But you see some that consistently outperform the others,
Mm-hmm.
and the others struggle. And you look at it and say, well, gee, we attribute it to culture and purpose and values.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at it, underlying those are these mindsets and behaviors.
Yep. Yep. So the purpose is kind of the Simon Sinek and the
Yep.
big why,
Yep.
right? And some of that
Yep.
stuff. This aspect of human element and getting back to the human element in sales, that's really going to be the key differentiator. AI is doing the opposite. And, you talk about that. So talk about how AI could do a great job or how it maybe can kind of get us on a faster path to mediocrity and poor performance?
So the way I just kind of the shortcut way I describe it is AI amplifies who we are. So if we're deeply customer centric, if we care about the value we create and deliver with our customers and that kind of thing, it's going to drive us to think very, very differently. And then when we engage AI can just amplify our ability to think differently, amplify our ability to really understand the problems, really look at the data and understand where the leverage points are, amplify kind of how do we connect effectively with our customers. So it takes for the person with those behaviors and those characteristics, it takes you to the next two or three levels above that. I look at in our own consulting practice, and in fact, in writing the book, it took me, because I co-authored this with Claude.
Yeah, I see on the back, the
Claude
reference.
took me two or three levels above what I was thinking. Even though the book is all me, it got me to think about things differently and do some things. So for people that have these behaviors and mindsets, it just ramps them up and amplifies them in ways that are unimaginable. But for people that are committed to mediocrity, the non-tactful way I say it is, if you're an idiot, AI amplifies your idiocy.
Yep. And even for those who maybe are not idiots, but are leveraging it, but not really striving for that elevation to that penultimate level. And that's really what we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
you can go to school to become a musician, and you can learn how to read music, and you can learn the craft of kind of playing and reading that music. But to be that kind of penultimate performer, it takes a whole bunch of different skill sets and a connection with the audience, and usually a bigger purpose. And so, or a sports metaphor is another good one that a lot of people use. Talk about that and kind of connections there that we can make. Is that really the model for the future? Because kind of music has been, technology has changed music substantially, from the player piano to, Spotify and everything else. But we still treasure those live performances. We're paying more than ever to go see the performers we love live, and they're putting on shows that are bigger and better and more refined and more talent than ever possible. Even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's something that I'm actually writing a paper on this right now, is there's the difference between kind of creativity and true original innovation in synthesis. And what AI tends to be extraordinary at is synthesizing things.
Absolutely.
And synthesizing things that sometimes appear to be creative. But when you really look at kind of the real kind of aha moments, when you're in a concert and you hear, I listen to plenty of AI generated music, and it's cool. It has the right vibe. I'm a Foo Fighters fan, so they can emulate Foo Fighters and all. But when you are actually watching the Foo Fighters perform, there's a completely different experience and that kind of thing. So I think it's that piece, and it's very subtle, but when you see it, it hits you, and it's something that AI can't do. I'd also like to go back to another point about the conflict between pursuing your potential and pursuing kind of excellence and pursuing mediocrity. The really ironic thing that I've discovered is it's harder and takes more work to pursue mediocrity. And the thing is that you keep trying real hard, but not hard enough. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And it takes more work to achieve the same goal being mediocre than it takes to achieve the same goal um, um, being excellent. And again, I'll use win rates as just kind of a trivial example
Mm-hmm.
for it. If I'm a person that is making my number at 15 to 20% win rate, and I have another person who's making her number at 50% win rate, guess who's working harder?
Yep.
And
The one
so
with that lower win rate. Absolutely.
and sometimes we kind of mistake this and say mediocrity is the easy way out. Mediocrity is the harder way out because we're consumed both with the amount of work we have to do to just kind of keep up, or we're consumed by the emotional toll it takes
Mm-hmm.
on us to say, I'm just not making it, and that kind of toll that it takes.
Yeah.
So for people that say it's too hard to be excellent, I say I'm a lazy person. It's too hard for me to be mediocre. I'd much rather be excellent or at least approaching excellence because it's much easier to do that.
Yeah. And I think that we have to think about it as a journey of improvement. Like there's no athlete that wakes up and says, okay, I'm going to, win the Super Bowl. It's
Yeah.
a journey and a practice. Ultimately,
Well,
we get back to a lot of
yeah,
those.
it's not a destination. It's a
Yeah.
journey, and it's the concept that you and I have been talking about for decades is continual improvement. How do
Yeah.
we learn? It's other people. I think James Cleary and some others have written about it. What happens if you get 1% better every day?
Yep.
And all the multiplier effect at the end. I mean, you're 137 times better at the end of the year. And so it's just those little incremental improvements. And the thing is how you get better. I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book, towards the end in my purpose, I look at kind of how we lost our purpose, and we were being really mediocre. And outside observers would say, well, gee, if I look at the revenue you guys generate, the impact that you're having on the clients, the reputation that you have, it's something all of us aspire to. But internally, I was saying, we're just kind of, I'm overstating it, phoning it in.
Yeah. Going through the
There's
motions, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much more we could do. And kind of the fact of writing this book told me, we can be, even though we're really, really good, we can be much better. So it was a personal journey and revelation for me that I can improve. I had one funny comment. Charlie Green, who's famous for the trusted advisor and the trust equation and all that kind of thing, he saw an early version of it. And Charlie has this, and I have this weird sense of humor. And Charlie calls me and he says, well, Dave, you're finally living up to your company name. And our company name is Partners in Excellence Making a Difference.
Yeah.
And, I realized since I formed the company, I hadn't talked a lot about excellence, and we'd done things. And it was a wake up call to me. It says, now I'm focused on how we start pursuing excellence and
Mm-hmm.
how we start making a difference for ourselves, for our customers, for our colleagues.
Yep. And the meaning of life is purpose. And so it starts
Yep.
there. I think one of the other things I liked in the book was you talk about daily excellence. And this is really important to me. I spoke about how I went through a really rough time losing my wife and grief. Dave, I know you're a fellow widower and have gone through the same with your late wife, Cookie, and your strong relationship and the partnership that you had. And I know that what got me through that and what gets me to pursue excellence every day are just these small little things that I learned to do through that transition of losing her. It was making up and making sure that the bed was made before I didn't get back into it and crawl back in and want to hide. It was making myself a lemon water every morning. First thing, don't have coffee, don't eat anything, have a lemon water. And then take care of yourself first. Read
Yeah.
scripture, so work out your faith, and then go to the gym and work out physical so that you had both of those covered before you got into the workday and everything else and the responsibility. It was those small little changes that I made
And,
that really kind of reset everything for me.
and it's really those small changes, but the discipline to stick to it
Mm-hmm.
every day. I mean, we just came into the new year, and last Friday is what they anoint as Quitters Day. Everybody signs up for the gym on January 2nd, and by January 9th, they've quit.
Yeah.
And all. But the thing that says, I got to get out and go to the gym. I have to do my meditation. I have to do my journaling. You see so many times people say, oh, we're in this react respond mode. Is right now I'm supposed to be prospecting, but I got this email from somebody. I got to respond to it. I'm going to push my prospecting on.
Yeah.
And also it's really that kind of daily discipline, those habits, and keeping to it. And then tied to that is the accountability to it, is I am accountable to myself to maintain that discipline. And there are no excuses. The excuses are my own invention. But, I get this call coming in. I don't have to respond to it right. The email coming in, I don't have to respond to it right now. I'm going to dedicate that to my prospecting block, and I'll pick it up later when I have a time to respond to emails and things like that.
Yeah. And Dave, I also think as one of the last points is hiring and then measuring for improvement. Two things that I think your framework could be used for, because I think when we think of hiring in this new AI world, all of these factors that you mentioned are so much more critical. The human element is so much more critical. And then as we're measuring, we can't just measure the number of calls, the number of, discovery questions that are filled out, the checking off the steps in MedPick. It's got to be much more about, yes, those things are important, and this human element becomes more and more important. And we should be measuring and improving those equally, if not more so.
Exactly. And I think, understanding how we measure those things and how we incorporate that into the business process. I think hiring is I think you have to hire people with the right mindsets, and then continue to develop it, because the mindset isn't a fixed thing, but how do you continue to develop and grow those? So you hire people that are curious, you hire people that are customer centric, you hire people that have these characteristics, and you don't say, okay, that's over, you have them, we can do that. You keep developing them. You keep, helping improve their curiosity, improve their customer centricity. If you have somebody with a closed mindset, and I've seen it so many times, I've seen people who have been top performers, but they refuse to adapt and change. They do it the way they always have. And they are uncoachable and unchangeable. And at some point, they become dinosaurs. And we know what happened to the dinosaurs.
Yeah, preach. The book is good enough, good enough. David Brock, what's the one thing you'd like to leave our Business Value Collective with today?
I think it is, we have tended, the pendulum has tended to swing to kind of the mechanisms that drive performance. Those, I don't want to understate the importance of those mechanisms, and I don't want to understate the importance of AI. But if we don't have these foundational behaviors and mindsets, we can't leverage those mechanisms as impactfully as we could. And likewise, there's another aspect to it. If we just have the right behaviors and mindsets, but we don't have the mechanisms like the AI tools and things like that, we can't amplify what we do. So it really is, and you'll see I have another book coming out in late February, early March, which really starts taking, how do we take these behaviors and mindsets? How do we take these mechanisms and integrate them in a way that 1 + 1 = 5?
Yeah, it is it's the human element and the mechanized or the AI element. And David, we'll just have to have you back on again once that one comes out. So
well, it's always a privilege. I enjoy our conversation so much.
So much, David. And it's going to be so valuable to everyone. Can't thank you enough for participating in the Value Coffee Talk podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Please remember, if you haven't done so, if you like this episode, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast, join our Business Value Collective. We've got some incredible events and other important items coming out. You can do that on LinkedIn or the geniusdrive.com website. And until next time, stay justified, my friends.